All right. Osio, Osta, Sohiya Iditla, Witi Robin Wayu. How is everybody? Welcome to the Red Road East. The Red Road East is an indigenous TV program dedicated to archiving and preserving the history, legacy, and culture of the indigenous peoples of the Americas east of the Mississippi River and the Caribbean. All right. Let's see, we got some folks in here now. Those who are joining, please do hit the like button. And if you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe. It doesn't cost you a dime. Okay. And can someone please let me know how the audio is sounding? Can y'all hear me? I like to get that out the way early. This way, in case there's any glitches, I'm not just here talking and holding y'all up and wasting my time as well. So I like to do an audio check early. Okay, thanks, Firebird. Okay, so we got See who we got in the house. And make sure y'all hit that thumbs up. We got 4 in the house. There should be 4 thumbs up. So let's see who we got in here. All right, let's see. Let's see who we got in here. Firebird says, hey, Fizz. Hey, OCO. Yeah, I sent you on your phone, Firebird. I sent you the link to the show if you want to join in, and I know it's spur of the moment. And it was spur of the moment for me. It wasn't planned, you know. So I just figured I'd seize the moment while I have this day off to squeeze a show in, because I hadn't really been able to have a lot of content going recently, because of my work schedule, you know. Let's see here. And who else we got? Let's see. All right, and we got Jarara says, peace and Pan-Africanism. Peace and Pan-Africanism to you as well. Okay. I know there's some people who, may try to jump down your throat for saying that, it's, you it's to each his own, we have a right to subscribe to whatever ideology we vibe with, you know. And the concept of Pan-Africanism would be good if a lot of the people on the continent would, a lot of times when they speak of Pan-Africanism, they're just speaking to those on the continent, and we have the receipts to prove that, the ideology, the idea, of, all melanated people, uh, coming together, is a good idea, but it's been one-sided for quite some time. But, you know, not to harp on that, you know. And let's see. And Firebird, let's see, Firebird says, try to follow the order here. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you had a crazy person going back and forth on with regard to that newspaper article. Yeah, if you want to come on and talk about that for a couple of minutes, you're quite welcome. Quite welcome. And let's see here. 11 and a half inches of snow y'all got there on Firebird. Wow. Yeah, we got a lot too. We got a lot. We got a whole lot. Probably that same amount here or more. I had to shovel out snow last night, and I got to go back out and shovel more snow in a little while, you know. Yeah. But yeah, so today's topic is a continuation of a series entitled Closing Henry Lewis's Gates. Okay. And we're going to shut that gate and close that gate. And again, This is not to put a bash on any type of African ancestry. It's not that, because we do know that there's a portion of us who do have that ancestry, okay? And, you know, when you talk about pre Columbian travels to the Americas via, you know, the Moors and, you know, the various peoples, seafarers from the continent, okay, we do know that we had that here, okay? So that is something that definitely comes up in the DNA, okay? And also with the genealogy, there are some people who have genealogies going back to the continent that can actually trace their genealogy, okay? And there's some that also have cultural retentions, okay? So this is not a bash on Africa or any denial of an African influence. But the issue is with Henry Louis Gates is that there is an attempt to downplay our indigenous and uh, our indigenous and autochthonous presence here in the Americas. Okay. And, you know, it's very disingenuous. And a lot of times the African aspect is overstated. Okay. And as you watch this series, we're going to produce all of the receipts to show you that the African aspect has been overstated and the indigenous and autochthonous aspect has been undermined. Okay. So, what we want to do is bring forth the real deal. Okay. And let's see how many viewers we've got here. See, we started with 4 people. Let's see. And now we have, let me see. Now we have, let's see, I mean, we have 1 person watching now. Why is it just 1 person watching? What happened? You know, why is everybody dropping off? Anyway, don't go anywhere. You know, we got some good, we got some good receipts coming. So don't go anywhere. Anyway, so this show is not going to be a long or drawn out show. We're going to go for half an hour and then close out because I got to go and deal with this snow. You know, as a matter of fact, let me look out the window here. Okay, it's not. It was snowing earlier. It stopped. It's just a little, some little tiny little dustings going on right now. So yeah, I want to go out and get some shoveling done. So we're only going to be half an hour. So what we're going to look at today, we're going to look at when Henry Louis Gates had, because he did a whole series, okay, with many different celebrities. And those celebrities, many of whom had oral histories of indigenous ancestry, had shown based on his testing that they had none. And now the thing is that, again, as we stated in the last show, a lot of these companies, they're not coming to the East Coast of the Americas, of North America, I'm sorry, and testing those tribes. Their samples are coming from like Central South America, that area. And if your family is not from, you know, that area, those areas, then why would you have indigenous ancestry from there? Of course, it's going to come up as low percentages, and in some cases, it'll be zero. Okay. And now some companies like 23andMe, it depends on their threshold. You know, some companies like 23andMe, their threshold is uh, lower. So you'll have like 0 point this and point that. So it's won't be like nothing. And even with that, when it's 0 point whatever, whatever, all that means is what they're not telling you is that the indigenous ancestry is ancient on the land because it's ancient ancestry. When you have the higher percentages, you're having more recent ancestry. Okay. And that's what Henry Louis Gates is not telling you. And it just goes to show that, we are indigenous because even though they're not using East Coast, and Caribbean samples, the indigenous ancestry is still there, even, among those regions. Okay. Because again, you know, people traveled, and even, you have the tribes that coming from the south traveling north, okay, and branching out to the Caribbean region, okay. So all that's saying, when you have the low percentages, is that your ancestry is ancient on the land, even if it's 1%, or 0 point whatever percent, okay. And that's what makes Henry Louis Gates, that's what makes what he's doing, so disingenuous, because he's not telling you any of this, okay? He's not telling you any of this. He's just saying we don't have the ancestry, You know, we're just African, and we don't have indigenous roots here. Our story here is just via the transatlantic slave trade. You know, our history is limited to the slave experience. Okay. So, and you find this all over the world, you know, you find this all over the world. You look in the Caribbean, they do the same thing. Whenever you see our presence, our presence is simply via slavery, you see. And I've dealt with this in earlier lectures years ago. For those who are new to this particular channel, I suggest that you go back into the show archives and look at some of the old shows. you know this way I don't have to go back and deal with stuff that we've already covered. Okay. But yeah, we dealt with all of that stuff years ago. Okay. And this channel here was dealing with that stuff long before most of these content creators that are around now, you know, or should I say all of them that are around now, you know. And Firebird is in the audience, and she could attest to that, because it was me and her. So she and I, you know. So if you check the timeline of our show, our shows, even before the Red Road East, because well, even the Red Road East, even the Red Road East is before all these other shows. But before the Red Road East, we would we had content on YouTube. If you go back, to the early 2000s, you'll see videos that myself and Firebird did, with the American Mound Builders series and the whole Black Indians Debunked series. Okay. That's going way back. That's going way back. Okay. So, anyway, I'm going to put up a disclaimer because we're going to take a look at a video. And I know YouTube is very quick to, they're very quick to take my videos down because, again, this show is the most dangerous indigenous program out there. Okay. Because we keep it 1,000% real. Okay. So give me 1 second. I'm going to put up this disclaimer because I'm going to show a video. And before we do that, let me see. Hold on 1 second. I have to talk to my wife for a second. Give me 1 second. All right, sorry about that, y'all. I had to talk to my wife for a second. And before we proceed any further, uh, for those who are so generous enough to leave a donation, uh, Cash App is available for donations. I'm going to put on the screen where you can send a donation. It doesn't matter how small, anything is appreciated. Okay. And $ K Love 83. Okay. And that's much appreciated. Okay. And so right about now, I'm going to put the disclaimer up before we show the video. Let's see. Share screen, image file, recent. Okay. So, Fair Use Act. Okay. So, I'm going to show a video, and this is for educational purposes only. Okay. And we're going to use a part of a video for the purpose of our show. It's educational as a reference point for what we're going to talk about. Okay. So let's see. Let me do this here. I'm going to show this video. And give me 1 second. Okay, under fair use. Okay, now let's see, share screen. Okay, how do we do this here? So camera video for is a video file. No, not video file. Cancel. Let me see. Image file, not image file. Share screen. Share screen. They make everything so doggone difficult now. Jesus Christ, man. All I want to do is share the doggone screen. Okay. Let me see. This one? Okay. All right, share. Okay. All right. Okay. Now this is for fair use. Again, fair use purposes. We just showed the disclaimer. Okay. And let's take a listen. Hold on. Wait, what happened? Give me 1 second. Bear with me here. They're making everything so difficult now. Let's see. Okay, now how do I, where's the video? Give me 1 second. We're having a little technical difficulty here. Now I gotta go back. Oh my goodness. Jesus Christ, man. Okay, I think this is it. Go back here. Okay, that one is.
As a half a white man.
Yeah. Wow, you're kidding.
There's a lot of sneaking and creeping back there on the plantation.
I guess. I guess.
Okay, let me know if y'all were able to hear that clip before I proceed. I don't want to play this and you weren't able to hear it. Were y'all able to hear that audio clip? Someone in the, if it's anyone in the chat who's watching can just press thumbs up or a 1 or whatever, just to let me know that y'all were able to hear that audio clip, that video clip right there. Anybody? Anybody? Was that? Okay, cool. All right, so let me continue playing.
Yes. Oh my
Go on
goodness.
to Tina Turner. Her family reports indigenous American ancestry.
Oh, yeah.
Tina grew up believing that 2 of her grandparents were part Native American.
But you're only 1% Native American.
Okay, so now remember what we talked about earlier, okay, about the small percentages. Okay, when you have those small percentages, it indicates that the ancestry is going way back. Okay, it's not recent admixture, it's further back in time. So that means that, okay, she's got ancient lineage on the land. Okay.
You know how your family has always thought that you had all this Native American heritage?
Yes.
It was white heritage that you had.
All this time I've been thinking Indian. I was dying to find out what tribe it was.
You're from the tribe of.
Oh, liar, liar, liar! What a liar he is. And okay, let me let it play before I dive in to show you what a dog and pony show this is. That's what this is. Okay, this is a dog and pony show. All right, let's just continue. I'm gonna show you that in a minute. Okay, let me bring that back just a little tiny bit. Okay, let me bring that back just a little tiny bit.
That you had.
All this time I've been thinking Indian. I was dying to find out what tribe it was.
You're from the tribe of.
Oh,
Europe. Your results are all over the map. We couldn't find an exact match.
okay. We can stop it right there. Okay. Let me stop it right there. Okay, let me show you. Let me X out of that, remove. Okay. And stop screen on that. Okay. And remove that. Okay, so what you just saw right there was a dog and pony show. Okay, that was a circus act. Okay. Even on Tina Turner's part, okay, I'm going to say, and this is just me, that he paid her and the other actors, okay, they're actors, okay, so they're only doing what they do, act. Am I right or am I wrong? They're actors. So they're on the Henry Louis Gates's series acting. They're acting. Okay? And we have to see it for what it is. He probably paid all of them, nicely to act. Okay? Now, she said she was dying to know what tribe she was. Again, acting. Now, what I'm going to do right now, wait a minute. Okay, I'm supposed to share this on Facebook and let everybody know that we're live. Let's see. That's one share. Let me share with wait. Give me 1 second. Let me share this to some of my peoples on Facebook. Give me 1 second. We're about to tear this apart. Okay. We're about to tear this apart. Because what you were watching there was straight up BS. Okay. And I like Tina Turner. I always like Tina Turner's music, you know, from a young child. But Tina Turner, you're full of it right now. Okay, you're full of it right now, respectfully, and may she rest in paradise. But she knows that she got paid for that, and she got paid well. Just the same with all of the other artists. I mean, entertainers, actors and artists, that were on there. That was a performance. So just give me 1 second. Let me send this out. Give me 1 second. All right. Oh, wait. Okay. Yeah. So now what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna share an excerpt from, as y'all know, I authored a book, okay, a couple of years ago. And that particular book, a lot of people, I got a lot of encouraging feedback with regards to that book. Why is everybody leaving? One person watching now? What's that about? And there was more thumbs up just a minute ago. Now is YouTube taking those thumbs up away? See, I told you they they hate this channel, because this channel keeps it more real than anybody else. I'm telling you. you know. Anyway, um, it is what it is. Okay, we have Jawar was still here. Who else is still here? Okay, okay, we've got more. Okay, why did they take those thumbs up away? What's up with that? Yeah, they be playing with this channel. I told y'all years ago they play with my channel. They take my subscribers away and all of that. Okay, they for whatever reason, you know. Like I said, we keep it extremely real here, you know, and not to toot my own horn, but what you get on this channel, you're not going to get on other people's channels who deal with the same type of information because I give you non-biased information and I'm not trying to hustle you. Okay, you have a lot of content creators out there who, you know, they'll put out false information just for sensationalism. I've busted them on their own channels. Okay, and they'll try to hustle you for information. They'll put out false information, and the gullible will go for it. Okay, they will go for it. All right, and then misinformation just goes viral. Okay, so anyway, now with regards to my book, okay, I put out a book a few years back. Got a lot of encouraging feedback about it. Some people say, you know, they couldn't put the book down and, you know, it's a masterpiece and this, that, and the other. And not to toot my own horn, but the next book is going to be even better. Okay. And again, it's not to toot my own horn. Okay. But the next book, it's got talking points that no one else is dealing with. Okay, that no one else is dealing with. All right, and again, that's not to toot my own horn, but you know we're really digging deep with the information. And again, this is decades worth of research. You know, you know, over 3 decades worth of research. Okay, so anyway, what I'm gonna do now is we're gonna look at Tina Turner's words, and I don't like to just talk. Okay, I said that it's a circus act that they put on, a you know dog and pony show that they put on for y'all, and you know it's acting, and I'm gonna prove that it's acting. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, so in my next book, the upcoming book, you know, because of my work schedule, I hadn't really been able to dedicate a whole lot of time to finishing the book. I'm 3/4 ways finishing the next book, but because of my work schedule, it just doesn't permit me to dedicate as much time as I would like. But so in the next book, I reference Tina Turner's own words, okay, from her own book, okay? And in her book, I, Tina, she talks about her indigenous ancestry, okay? And I'm gonna read you some of the parts of her book that I quote, okay? And you're gonna see that what you saw in the Henry Louis Gates's documentary, it really it's and what she said in there is in total opposition to what's in her book. Okay, it's in total opposition to her book. Okay, so keep in mind what she just said in her video when he said she's only 1% Native American. Okay, keep that as a placeholder. He said that she's only 1% Native American, and she started laughing. Okay, and she said, "Wow." She said, "I was always dying to know what tribe." Remember that? Okay, keep that in mind as we proceed and we look at her own words. Okay, so what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna look. We're gonna look in her book. Okay, and we're on page 4. Okay, and I quote this in my new book. Okay, it's from one of the chapters. Okay, and she says Anna Mae Bullock was born on the morning of November 26, 1939. Okay, let me make this a little bigger. This font is kind of small here. 1939 at Brownsville's Haywood Memorial Hospital, a 2-story municipal building whose basement was relegated to the tending of Black patients. She was quickly transported up up Highway 19 to Nutbush Home, a 4-room shotgun house ensconced amid the vast and bountiful Poindexter acreage. Her father, Floyd Richard Bullock, was resistant. I'm sorry, I'm bugging. Let me make this a little bigger. Okay, it's a little easier on the eyes. Her father, Floyd Richard Bullock, was resident overseer on the Poindexter farm, supervising harvests and hands for the property's white owners. A deacon of Woodlawn Baptist Church. Richard was Richard, as everyone called him, was also, as everyone knew, a man in constant conflict with his wife, Zelma Bullock, Anna Mae's mother, was a Black Indian of high spirits, was a Black Indian of high spirits, anything but a homebody. She had been smoking cigarettes and shooting 45s since the age of 10 and was not, as Richard had come to painfully be aware, a woman to be trifled with. Richard and Zelma's fights, real wall cattlers. Hold on, let me scroll down. Real wall rattlers. I'm sorry, yeah. Okay. Richard and Zelma's fights, real wall rattlers, were the dominant feature of the domestic landscape. There was one other child at home, little Aline, almost 3, and she greeted her new sister as an ally. Down the hill and across Forked Deer Road lived the Indian branch of the clan. The Indian branch of the clan. Zelma's parents, Josephus and Georgina Curry, Papa Joe, short and dark, a longtime Poindexter sharecropper, was a warm-hearted, child-loving, church-going Baptist, though not militant by any means, and 3/4 Navajo, a distinction in Tennessee, land of the Cherokee. Let me read that again. She said she was dying to know what tribe. Hold on, let me stop reading for a second here. Are y'all paying attention to what's being said here? Okay. Y'all paying attention to what's being said here? She said in Gates's documentary that she was always dying to know what tribe. Check. Am I right or am I wrong? Did she not say that? She said she was always dying to know what tribe. However, here she is making specific tribal distinctions. She's not saying, she's not giving a general, like, a lot of people who just figured out they were Indian 2 days ago. Okay. She's giving specific tribes and tribal information. Okay. So she says here, let me make this bigger again. Make this bigger. Make the font bigger. Give me 1 second. Font went down, so I got to zoom in. Okay, so she says, church-going Baptists, though not militant by any means, and 3/4 Navajo, a distinction in Tennessee, land of the Cherokee. Mama Georgie was a wizened squaw, had the Cherokee blood, and was, like her husband, 1/4 black. Okay? So now, hold that point right there. Okay? And we're going to skip over to another point in the book. Give me 1 second. Let me turn the page. Give me 1 second. Okay. Give me 1 second. Let me look for the part that I'm looking for here. Okay. Give me 1 second. Don't go anywhere. What we're doing, we're pulling up the receipts here and calling BS on Henry Louis Gates's part, and also, sadly to say, on Tina Turner's part. Okay, give me 1 second. Is it this page? Yeah, okay. Well, things said like that. Street, Indian blood, I guess, blah, 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 blah. Let's see. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to find the part, the other part in the book. Let's see. Maybe it's the next page back. Let's see. 15 back. Okay, yeah. Okay. All right, yeah. This is one of the pages. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, yes. This is where we want to be. Okay, so now, all right, y'all all right? Y'all all right in the chat? Let's see who's still here. Firebird is still here. Yeah. Firebird sees the fuckery. Yeah. Yeah, she lied. To help him, exactly. And probably to help her pockets, because I'm sure she got paid, you know. Yeah, I know, definitely. That's part of your heritage, Navajo. Yeah. And those who watch the show know that I just discovered that the Navajo is part of my lineage as well. Yep. And okay, so now here's the other part, right? So it says here, Tina says, I was what, 3 when they left. Now she's talking about when her parents she's talking about her parents and when they were moving around and stuff like that, and the parents left them with family members and things of that nature. So she says, I was what, 3 when they left? 3 when they left? She's asking the question. Just a little thing, but I was miserable. I was so unhappy. I loved Mama Georgie and my cousins, and I wanted to live with them. Oh, Mama Georgie. She wore men's shoes and a shirt over the top of her dress, and she looked totally Indian, had the layered look before anyone thought to call it fashionable. In fact, she looked a lot like Diana Vreeland when I think about it, the editor of Vogue. She was great. She'd never beat us if we were bad. She'd just hit us on the elbow with a stick of wood or pop us on the head with a spoon. And we'd go, wow. It didn't really hurt, but just the same, you wouldn't want to let her get near you with that spoon or the stick. She was fun, mainly. I loved her. There was a lot of love there with the Indians. Let me repeat that again. There was a lot of love there with the Indians. Just natural affection. And that was where I wanted to be. But where did I get thrown when Ma and Daddy left? To my father's people, it was awful. Mama Roxana was a big woman with fair skin and long hair, mingled with silver, and she was a church woman, wore the Dr. Scholl's shoes and the hair pulled back in a ball. She was a seamstress, and in her house, dresses stayed washed, starched, and ironed. And the house was spotless, of course. And ever wanted to, all I ever wanted to do was get out of there, out in the fields, out with the animals. But she held me prisoner. She'd always make me sit in some damn chair. I hated it. I was never one for sitting still, and I was never one for a dress either. That was when I was introduced to the church, too. Mama Roxana dragged me to church every Sunday. Okay, we're going to skip down a little bit and get to the point that, for the purposes of this particular lecture, says sometimes the best times back then I would get to visit Aline and my cousins at Mama Georgie's. We'd run around outside all day long laughing and playing, and we'd go to bed worn out and half dirty and happy, so happy. We lived like Indians. At Mama Georgie's, it was time to get down in the dirt and have fun, to climb trees and chase the animals. Let me repeat that again. We lived like Indians at Mama Georgie's. Okay? Those visits never lasted long, though. I'd look up and there'd be my Uncle Gil coming for me to take me back to Roxana's. And it was like a nightmare starting all over again. I would run and scream and cry, no, no, no. And they'd have to chase me down and take me back there. Okay? And let's see. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see. 1 second. Let me see if it was anything else. Give me 1 second. Just looking to see if there was another part. Yeah, that was it. Oh wait, let me see. Wait. Hold on, just bear with me a second. I just want to make sure I didn't skip over any particular point. Hold on 1 second. Oh yeah, here. I didn't like Cousin Ella Vera, but I didn't like her a lot, if you know what I mean. So I became a real loner then. If anybody took care of me, it was my sister, her and Florence Wright. Now, Florence was a beautician that Daddy had found to do our hair. And after he left, she became the mother figure for me. Hold on. The Wrights were well to do black people in Ripley who had their own home and everything. And Florence was a big, fine yellow woman with red hair and real feisty, you know. She had a husband, but he didn't matter. It was just her. She was wonderful, but she was wild too. Once, when she was drunk, I saw her stand in front of the house and go to the bathroom without even taking her undies off. Oh, it was shocking, but I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Everybody knew that Florence worked hard and lived nicely. She was really nice, and she sort of took care of us a little after Daddy left. I mean, I wouldn't have to pay to get my hair done, that sort of thing. There was a whole family of Wrights. Red people looked like a tribe of Indians, and some of the women were beauticians. These people were very interesting to me, being a country girl. They didn't work in the fields or any of that. They worked in beauty shops. That was their business. And they did well, had their own homes. Okay. Now, I wanted to read that part because a lot of times, you know, indigenous people tend to deal with other indigenous people, in terms of, extended family and stuff like that. Okay. So this whole thing that Henry Louis Gates brought out in his documentary and what Tina Turner co-signed on, you know, it was all a show. It was entertainment. That's all it was entertainment, you know. That's all it was. So with this particular series, and again, I said I keep it at half an hour, and right now we're at, let's see, we're at, let me see how much time in. I think we're past the half hour point. Let me see. Yeah, we're past the half hour point. And I just wanted to drop that nugget, and this is a series, and we're going to be bringing you a lot of receipts to bust up this Henry Louis Gates clown show. We're going to tear down the gate. We're going to kick the gate in, break it down, bust it up. Okay? Bust it up. You understand? Because I remember back in the days, you had a lot of indigenous people who looked like us, some of them were in tears after that documentary. Firebird, I know you know what I'm talking about. I know you know what I'm talking about. Firebird, if you're in the chat, tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong. A lot of people after that Henry Louis Gates' documentary were in tears almost after that documentary. Okay? Because you had people who knew their family history. They didn't need anybody to tell them, what they were or what they weren't, But, here you have this quote unquote big scholar, who came out on national TV and telling all of those of us who of this melanation that we're not indigenous. Okay, and a lot of people fell for that okie doke. Of course, I didn't fall for that okie doke. Yeah, see, Firebird remembers. She knows. Of course, she knows. She remembers. Okay, and of course, I didn't fall for that okie doke because again, I wasn't one of these people who discovered indigenous ancestry based on reading some books on genealogy or going to the archives and discovering that our family already knew, the elders already knew this. So it wasn't any big deal for me, hearing him say that You know, I was coming out attacking him from day one when he came out with that, you know. So, but yeah, a lot of the people who were not as researched and didn't know the history, they were very depressed. Even till this very day, you have a lot of people who are still scarred from that particular documentary that Henry Louis Gates did. You know, I talk to them on a regular basis. I'm not I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. Actually talk to these people, okay, on a daily basis, you know, who are still scarred from that, you know, and actually, you know, questioning their indigeneity. Okay. So this series here is to bust all of that up. Okay. And again, for those of you who are generous enough to leave a donation, if you believe in the work that we're doing and to help us to continue doing this work, please leave a donation. And again, no donation is too small. Okay. But I'm not going to keep y'all. Some of us are off today, others still had to work despite all of the snow that was dropped on us yesterday and the night before. So I'll let y'all go and do your thing, and I'm going to go and do my thing as well, you know. So it was nice chatting with y'all, and I thank those of you who did come into the chat and who did view the show. Okay. And you know, I'll leave you with that. Okay. And on that note, I'll say Dodo Dog, Sereme, Ayo.